Imagine looking down at your hands and, seeing the thick, ribbed fabric of orange flight suit sleeves.
Oh, yeah.
And you can actually hear this deep, resonant hum of hyperdrive engines vibrating all around you. I mean, for anyone who grew up swinging a broomstick around the backyard, pretending it was a lightsaber, sitting in the actual cockpit of a Rebel X-Wing is, well, it's the ultimate childhood fantasy.
It absolutely is.
But today, we are going to look at what happens when that exact dream actually makes you physically violently ill and what you do to survive it.
Right, because today we are diving into this fascinating cross-section of technology and human biology. We're taking a very specific experience, a 2017 PlayStation VR test
Yeah.
of the Star Wars Rogue One X-Wing VR mission, and we're using it to explore the profound psychological and physiological realities of virtual embodiment.
Yeah.
And, this was just a piece of downloadable content for the game Star Wars Battlefront. But the way the human tester reacted to it, I mean, it goes way beyond just a standard game review.
Which is exactly what makes this the perfect deep dive for you listening today. Whether you are, hardcore gamer, someone who follows tech trends, or just intensely curious about how easily the human mind can be manipulated, this specific Star Wars mission is an incredible shortcut to understanding how our brains process reality.
Exactly.
We are going to explore how a completely fabricated digital universe tricks your ancient biology into believing it is absolute truth.
And the environment the player is dropped into here is incredibly demanding. This isn't a static virtual museum tour.
No, definitely not.
The mission requires the player to navigate through dense asteroid fields, escort an allied rebel ship, engage in these high-speed chaotic dogfights with Imperial TIE fighters, and ultimately help take down a massive Imperial cruiser. It is just a relentless barrage of sensory input.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before the ship even takes off, before a single laser is fired, the brain hacking begins. The tester puts the headset on, finds himself sitting in the cockpit, and does the most natural thing in the world, which is they look down. And they don't see an empty chair. They don't see a floating camera perspective.
No, they see a body.
Yes. They see legs clad in an orange flight suit. They see gloved arms resting on their lap. They see a pilot's chest. And the absolute kicker here is that the chest actually appears to be breathing.
That breathing detail is so crucial. The developers established this immediate sense of physical presence, and the psychological impact of that, it really cannot be overstated.
Wow.
When you look down and see a virtual body occupying the exact spatial coordinates where your real physical body should be, your brain doesn't just register it as a neat graphic. It actively starts drawing lines of connection.
Really? Just from seeing the suit?
Yeah, it maps your proprioception, which is your internal sense of where your limbs are in space.
Yeah.
It maps that onto that digital avatar.
It's like putting on a perfectly tailored digital suit of armor. I mean, the technology works overtime to convince your brain that this new Rebel pilot body is actually yours.
Right.
The tester found that when they pushed the thumbstick on their controller to steer the ship, the digital hands in the game physically moved the flight stick in the virtual cockpit. They could even reach out and press random, meaningless buttons on the dashboard just to see the digital finger make contact.
Which brings in this concept from media studies called the diegesis, which is basically the narrative world of the story.
Okay.
Ordinarily, you are an external observer of the diegesis.
Yep.
You watch the Star Wars universe through a screen, safe on your couch.
Sure, eating popcorn.
Exactly. But by syncing the avatar's micro-movements with the player's real-world physical intentions, something as subtle as a breathing animation or the twitch of a finger on a dashboard, the game completely bridges that gap.
It pulls you in.
It crafts this state of make-believe immersion, where the physical body becomes the anchor point within the narrative. The brain just accepts the premise, I am physically inside this universe.
That level of immersion sounds almost magical, but I have to wonder about the fragility of it. It's still just 2017 software running on a console.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you poke at the edges of this digital suit of armor, if you actively try to break the illusion, what happens to that carefully constructed sense of reality?
Well, the instinct to test the boundaries of a fabricated reality is incredibly strong for anyone playing these games. And during this specific test, the player did exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
And it resulted in a rather bizarre discovery.
This might actually be the funniest detail of the whole experience. So the player realizes they have a total 360-degree freedom of movement with their head.
Right.
So they start playing around with the camera angle, craning their neck, trying to effectively look over their own digital shoulder to see themselves from behind.
As you do.
As you do. And they contort themselves enough to finally catch a glimpse of their avatar's body from the back, and they discover that their digital X-Wing pilot has absolutely no head.
None. Just a completely hollowed out neck collar.
Yeah.
An empty space where a human head should be.
A headless pilot flying an X-Wing through space. I mean, it's like some weird sci-fi version of Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
Now, I assume this isn't some dark lore about the Rebel Alliance, but rather a technical limitation. Like, if they actually rendered the pilot's face and helmet, the player's internal camera would just be staring at the digital inside of the avatar's eyeballs. It's like trying to wear a physical mask from the inside.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it, actually. Because, processing power in virtual reality is a precious commodity, but more importantly, the player's eyes literally are the camera.
Right.
If developers place a digital head in that exact coordinate space, the camera perspective clips directly into the back of the virtual helmet, blocking the entire field of view.
Oh, that makes sense.
So the headless avatar is a necessary practical developer trick. It's a hollow shell designed perfectly to accommodate the player's real-world field of vision.
But discovering that trick has a massive psychological side effect. The tester noted that seeing that headless shell instantly jolts you out of the diegesis.
Totally.
You are flying through space, you look back, see this hollow neck, and suddenly you are hyper-aware of your actual physical body sitting in a living room on Earth. The illusion shatters, and it leaves you feeling strangely exposed.
It forces an immediate jarring awareness of the physical self.
Yeah.
And that sudden self-awareness completely changes how the player interprets the visual scale of the game.
How so?
Well, once you realize you are essentially just a pair of eyes floating above a hollow digital shell, you start to reevaluate your relationship to the massive environment around you.
And the scale in this Star Wars environment is absolutely staggering. You have 360 degrees of infinite space. The player is looking out at the entire Rebel fleet, flying past massive, looming planets, and eventually staring down Imperial Star Destroyers that fill the entire field of view. Surrounded by all of that, the tester reported feeling incredibly tiny, almost fragile.
Right, because think about how your brain calculates scale right now. I mean, for anyone listening, take a look around your environment. Our houses, our cars, our doorways, they are all scaled appropriately to human dimensions.
Yeah. Everything is built for us.
Exactly. We feel a sense of ownership over our spatial environment. But when you are placed in a virtual space where the visual cues tell your brain that a starship the size of a modern city is hovering silently right above you, it profoundly alters your sense of spatial awareness.
It strips away that everyday human arrogance. You aren't the center of the universe anymore. You are a speck.
Yes. Visual scale in a virtual space physically alters our sense of self-importance. It creates this palpable feeling of vulnerability. You're a fragile, headless entity in a deeply hostile, incredibly large universe.
Setting the stage for what comes next.
Right. It completely primes the player's nervous system for the tension of the combat that is about to begin.
And the combat in an X-Wing does not hold back. Staring at a massive, beautiful planet in static awe is one thing. But moving through that massive space at incredible speeds is where the physical reality of VR truly rears its head.
Oh, yeah. The transition from static observation to high-speed kinetic movement always reveals the ultimate biological challenge of virtual reality.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We are talking about severe motion sickness.
Yeah.
The moment the action kicks into high gear, the tester is thrown into these intense dogfights with TIE fighters. They are executing tight ridges, those sharp banking turns, pulling off vertical loops, and dodging erratically through a dense asteroid field.
It's intense.
And the immediate result is overwhelming vertigo and nausea. The tester actually remembered a previous game they tried, something called Scavenger's Odyssey, which caused such intense sickness they had to rip the headset off and stop playing entirely.
It is a devastating physical reaction to an event that is entirely fictional.
All right, so we have a total civil war happening between the visual cortex and the vestibular system in the inner ear. My eyes are telling my brain one thing, and my inner ear is telling it another.
Exactly. And to understand the sheer panic your brain experiences in that moment, you have to look at the mechanics of the vestibular system.
Okay, break that down for us.
So deep inside your ear are these tiny, fluid-filled canals that act as a biological gyroscope. Whenever your physical body moves, tilts, or accelerates, that fluid shifts.
Right.
It bends tiny microscopic hairs that send instantaneous signals to your brain about your position in physical space. It's the fundamental system that keeps you balanced and upright.
So if I'm the tester sitting on my couch playing this game, My inner ear is sending a very clear message like, hey, we are sitting completely still, upright, on a stationary cushion. Gravity is pulling straight down.
Meanwhile, inside the VR headset, your visual system is screaming a completely different reality. Your eyes are telling your brain, we are currently executing a 4G vertical loop while rolling sharply to the left to avoid a laser blast.
The eyes say we are doing Olympic-level aerial gymnastics, and the ears say we are taking a nap.
And that absolute conflict between horizontal physical reality and vertical virtuality causes a total system failure in the brain.
Wow.
The brain receives two completely contradictory streams of absolute data, and it does not know how to reconcile them. From an evolutionary standpoint, the human brain assumes that if your eyes and your balance center are suddenly disagreeing this violently, there is only one logical explanation.
Which is...
You have ingested a neurotoxin.
Wait, let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around this. Because my eyes and my ears disagree about whether or not I'm doing a barrel roll in an X-Wing, my ancient monkey brain assumes I've eaten poisonous berries.
It assumes you are hallucinating due to poisoning, yes.
That is incredible. We are fighting space battles using technology from the future, but we are doing it with biology built for the Stone Age.
Yep.
So the nausea isn't just a side effect of the screen, it is a literal defense mechanism. The brain thinks it is dying, so it tries to purge the system.
Right. It induces severe nausea to force you to vomit out whatever toxic substance it believes is causing the sensory hallucination. It's an incredibly powerful, ancient physiological response designed to save your life.
And normally, that ancient response wins. The brain says purge, and you take off the headset, lie down on the floor, sip some ginger ale, and never play the game again.
Usually, yes.
But that didn't happen here. This is the part of the experience that absolutely blew my mind.
It's the intervention of sheer human willpower.
Because this wasn't just some generic, nameless spaceship. This was Star Wars. The tester explicitly noted that they were tapping into a deeply held childhood dream.
Right.
The desire to actually sit in the cockpit of an X-Wing and fight the Empire was so overpowering that they absolutely refused to quit. Instead of taking off the headset and surrendering to the nausea, they consciously decided to fight through it. They started actively hacking their own brain to survive the mission.
Which elevates the entire scenario from a simple hardware test to this fascinating observation of human neuroplasticity. The player didn't just grit their teeth and endure the pain. They developed highly specific mechanical coping strategies to mitigate the physiological panic their brain was experiencing.
They figured out two very specific tactics to keep the poisonous berry defense mechanism at bay. First, whenever the vertigo started to really hit during a dogfight, they would force themselves to stop looking around the beautiful 360-degree space.
Okay.
They actively centered their point of view squarely in the middle of the screen, looking straight ahead at the dashboard of the X-Wing.
Right, and by anchoring their vision to the static, unmoving elements of the virtual cockpit, the heavy frame of the window, the glowing control panels, they provided their brain with a stable visual reference point.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, that static digital dashboard matched the stillness their inner ear was reporting from the physical couch. It artificially reduced the sensory conflict.
And the second tactic was changing how they physically moved in the real world. They actively avoided any rapid head movement. Instead of whipping their head from left to right or violently looking up and down to track the TIE fighters zooming past, they made their physical neck movements very deliberate, smooth, and slow.
Because minimizing secondary visual motion prevents exacerbating the nausea. If the virtual ship is already spinning, adding physical head rotation on top of it just overwhelms the visual cortex.
It's just too much input.
Exactly. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the truly mind-bending takeaway from this trial isn't just that these temporary strategies kept the player from throwing up. It's what happened to their neurobiology over time across multiple play sessions.
The tester realized that their brain was actually adapting. The nausea started to fade. They were getting used to the impossible physics of the Star Wars universe.
The human brain literally began to rewrite its own rules for this specific environment. Through repeated, stubborn exposure, the brain started to accept an entirely new paradigm.
That's wild.
It learned that when the user is inside this specific visual stimulus, this orange flight suit, this X-Wing cockpit, it is entirely normal and safe for the inner ear to stop sending matching positional data.
So it stops panicking.
Yes, the brain stopped interpreting the sensory disconnect as a toxic threat, and started accepting it as the fundamental physics of this particular reality.
They literally trained their brain to ignore the biological gyroscope in their inner ear as long as the headset was on. I mean, the comparison made in the analysis is to acquiring sea legs on a boat.
It is the exact same physiological adaptation. When you first step onto a boat, the constant, unpredictable rolling of the deck conflicts violently with what your eyes see, especially if you're looking at the static walls inside a cabin.
Sure, you feel awful.
The brain panics and you get seasick, but after a few days at sea, your brain adapts to the constant motion. It recalculates the baseline for what constitutes balance, and you feel completely fine.
Oh, wow.
Pilots experience the exact same adaptation overcoming air sickness. It's neuroplasticity and action physiological adaptation through sustained environmental exposure.
And the analysis points out that dealing with this sensory disconnect isn't a new problem for humanity, even if consumer virtual reality is a relatively new technology.
Right.
To solve the nausea problem in games like this, the video game industry shouldn't just be looking forward at better graphics engines. They need to look backward. They need to study the scientific literature on motion sickness from the 1960s.
Oh, absolutely. The 1960s were the absolute golden age of aerospace medicine. During the space race and the Apollo program, scientists were developing the very first immersive flight simulators.
Except.
They were strapping astronauts into massive centrifuges and spinning them in multi-axis rotation to figure out exactly where the human biological limit was.
So NASA was basically tripping over the exact same biological tripwires in 1965 that a video game developer is tripping over in 2017.
Precisely. NASA spent a decade rigorously studying how the human body reacts to extreme sensory conflict and zero-gravity environments. They mapped the exact thresholds of the vestibular system.
That's fascinating.
And today's VR developers are essentially creating hyper-advanced flight simulators in people's living rooms. And they are running headfirst into the same ancient biological constraints that NASA had to engineer around.
So instead of trying to brute force a fix with higher frame rates or sharper resolution, the industry needs to design what the analysis calls recipes for level design.
Right.
Building the virtual experience around the actual constraints of human biology, pacing the action to give the vestibular system time to recover, using stable reference points like the X-Wing dashboard, crafting the game mechanics to respect the inner ear.
Because the hardware powering the headset can simulate absolutely anything, faster light speed, tighter turns, infinite scale. But the biological hardware, like the human body itself, has very strict, very ancient limits. The design of the virtual space must respect those limits, or at least safely and gradually train the player's brain to expand them.
So what does this all mean? Let's step back and look at the whole picture. We often talk about video games, especially virtual reality, as a form of escapism.
Sure.
A way to leave the physical world behind and just exist as a floating consciousness in a digital galaxy. But it seems like this Star Wars VR experience proves the exact opposite.
It absolutely shatters the idea of a mind-body disconnect. When you put on that headset, your physical body doesn't disappear. It actually becomes the ultimate central bridge between the real world and the virtual one. If the illusion of the X-Wing is going to work, the game software has to convince the biology first.
From the very first moment you look down and see a breathing chest that tricks your proprioception, to the intense stomach-churning nausea of a dogfight that triggers a prehistoric defense mechanism, your body is the true interface. It is constantly demanding to be recognized.
And yet, if the psychological motivation is strong enough, like the overpowering childhood desire to fly alongside the Rebel Alliance, the human body is incredibly willing to rewrite its own ancient rules to make that bridge hold. The neuroplasticity of the brain will literally alter your perception of gravity to let you stay in the fantasy.
It's an unbelievable testament to the adaptability of human biology. To you listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. I hope the next time you put on a VR headset or even just watch someone else flailing around in a virtual space, you think about that complex, invisible war happening right behind their eyes between the visual cortex and the inner ear.
The biology of immersion really is a marvel, and it leaves us with a fascinating, slightly unsettling prospect to consider on your own. If our brains can literally rewire themselves to accept the zero-gravity physics of an X-Wing dogfight simply because we want to live inside the Star Wars universe, what other impossible, entirely alien environments could our physical bodies learn to accept as our new normal?